Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Gareth Boyle. I'm the Senior Marketing Executive for Fusion 5's Microsoft solution. We're joined today by my colleagues, F&O Director Craig Westcott, Industry Director for Manufacturing Paul Hutchings, Principal Consultant for F&O Radhika Dua, CRM Consultant Eleanor White, and our General Manager for CE Paul Griffin. Before I hand over to Craig for a short introduction to the event, I've got a few quick bits of housekeeping. The first half of the event will be presented by our speakers listed before, with the second half acting as our live Q&A panel. If you do have any questions at any time, you're going to see the ability to submit a question in the top right-hand side of your screen there. For any questions we are unable to answer in time, we will share a recording of the event and a transcript with all question and answers with you after the case. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our F&O Director, Craig, to kick proceedings off. Craig.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you joining this webinar. We're really excited to be running it today. I'm Craig Westcott, as Gareth mentioned. I look after ERP for Fusion 5 across Australia and New Zealand. So today we're going to be covering manufacturing in detail, so specifically process manufacturing, Dynamics 365 for manufacturing. We've got a great lineup of experts to share knowledge with you, to dive quite deep, actually, which is very exciting. A little bit about Fusion 5 first. So we're a Dynamics 365 partner across Australia and New Zealand. We are part of Microsoft Inner Circle, and we've been focused on Dynamics for the last number of years, and it's a big focus for our business. We do finance and operations, CE, commerce, Azure, and various other capabilities in the Microsoft family. We've got over 130 people odd in the team focusing on Microsoft. So it's a massive drive. So just today, Paul, I'm going to hand over soon to Paul Hutchings, who's our Industry Director of Manufacturing, and Paul's going to be diving quite deep into some of the challenges that process manufacturers face in this area. By the way, if you're a discrete manufacturer and you don't focus as much on process manufacturing, do let us know, because we're more than happy to organize a separate session straight afterwards or on another day afterwards to dive deeper into some of your challenges. Paul will obviously talk about relevant things for you, but just let us know. Then we're going to hand over to Radhika Dua, who's a principal consultant in our team, and she's going to be diving quite deep into e-commerce and specifically actually call center, because that's very relevant to manufacturers. And then we'll hand over to our CE team. Eleanor White's going to talk a little bit about sales and customer service for manufacturers. And that's pretty much it for today. And it's a really short session, so would love to talk to you more in detail as you go. Just use the chat if you want to ask any questions or you'd like us to follow up later. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Paul.
Okay. Morning, everybody. Hopefully you can see my slides. I can't see what you're seeing, so I'm trusting the technology. Okay, so what we're going to do now is let's start the slideshow. Okay, so the agenda today is that we're going to go through the differences about process manufacturing. We're going to go through the challenges of what process manufacturers identify with, what capabilities F&O provides, into demos, and then some question and answers at the end. Now, I've got a lot of slides to get through, so I'll go quite quickly. So the difference here from discrete manufacturing is that we're in control of continuous and near continuous manufacturing processes. We also have a very heavy quality management section with process manufacturers, usually. Integrated tracking of raw materials, byproducts and co-products and finished goods, usually due to compliance, and multi-dimensional products. So we quite often have industries where we have got the same products going in and out of the process, and they get packed into different end results. And the last thing, of course, is batch control. Process manufacturing is very heavily regulated in batch control. Okay, so the demands on process manufacturer. So there's a number of demands on here. Trade promotion, rebates, chargeback and deductions is one that everyone has to deal with. Razor thin margins, Short product life cycles, health and wellness trends come into it a lot these days, and the unpredictability of global supply. Okay, so we're trying to achieve a balance into the essential to sustaining a competitive advantages in the manufacturers. And as you can see, our goal here is to engage customers, to empower employees, to transform products, and to optimize the operations. Now, today's session will be more focused on the optimization of the operations. Just to give you an idea of the type of industries we deal with, I'm using the SIC codes, for instance. So we're running through 20, which is meat, dairy, grain, bakeries, and beverages industries. We also focus very heavily on chemicals, drugs, paints and cleaners, and industrial organic chemicals. Okay, process manufacturing. Okay, so F&O capabilities in process manufacturing. So to begin with, we have approved vendors, catch weight, co-products, and formulations. So an approved vendor, for example, is when we actually attach a vendor specifically to a product, and that vendor has an approval, and that approval can run to a certain date, or else it can be running forever. Now, the advantage of using this is that if you don't have approved vendors and you try to order something off it, it will actually stop you from ordering it, because if they're not approved, it can't effectively enter your plant. So catch weights is a method of recording a catch weight unit, which is effectively an average weight unit for a particular product. So instead of trying to transact in kilos all the time, you can actually have ranges of catch weights and call them individual units, and you can track your inventory stock and issue accordingly. Now, there's different techniques for the catch weight. You can record actual weights on the way out and average weights on the way in, and net you should end up with the same result. Okay, very interesting with places like abattoirs and poultry factories, because you know the bird size they get, for instance, is going to come in at all different sorts of weights, and so trying to record each weight, you can actually record a batch quantity for it coming through. Also, production type. So opposed to a traditional production type, which is multiple raw materials going through a single manufacturing process and producing one end item, we've extended that by using formulations. So we have the ability to have multiple raw materials going through a single manufacturing process or multiple manufacturing process and producing an end item plus co-products plus byproducts. Or the other option, of course, is to actually use a planning item where we have a single raw material which we are then going to deconstruct to produce multiple end items. With your co-products are slightly different to a normal BOM. The whole idea of co-products is that you create a finished formulation, and then you use your co-products to distribute costs. So all the materials get issued to the job, and then the costs then get distributed to the co-products, all the extra products you produce. An example here is I can actually manually assign the cost allocation to my products, or else there is actually an option there to do TBC, which is total cost allocation. So in your formulation, I'm showing here a exploded formulation, and effectively what you can see here is you can see the multiple layers going down, and you can see the complete structure of a finished product through multiple BOM layers, including co-products coming out of it. So as you can see in this example here, I've got a number of co-products produced during one of the operations. Some of those products are then used further on in the process and reabsorbed into the product. Okay, then next section is we've got different ways of issuing materials. So we've got step consumption, yield, alternative agreements, active agreements, and percentage control. So a step consumption is effectively if you have a process that you're going through and you use some sort of stabilizer as a good example. So if you're working with chemicals, depending on the batch size that you're producing, you may have a product that you're going to use as a stabilizer, and it's not a variable size product, and it's not a consistent product. It's purely based on what batch size you actually do. So by setting up step consumption, you can actually issue a quantity of that product based on a formulation size. Then into the yields. Now, yields you can set against an item itself, or otherwise you can actually set it against a formula. Now, the whole idea of a yield is this is an expected loss you're going to get during the manufacturing process. So if I've got an order for 1,000 units and I've got a 93% yield, it's no point in issuing enough material just to give me the 1,000 units. So what the system does automatically is it will actually up the quantities that you require of raw materials to make sure that we're going to end up getting 1,000 good units out. So it compensates for the 7% loss that you're actually going to get. Very handy, because there's no point in telling the customer, well, you know, I know you ordered 1,000, but we could only make 930. You know, they don't quite buy that these days. Alternative agreements, ingredients. Okay, so inside of a formulation, you have the ability to put alternative ingredients inside that formulation. The example here is I've got sucrose, fructose, and glucose. They all do the same job. They probably set this order because of the either supply or price. And what it effectively will do is it will look for sucrose, but if it can't find any sucrose, it will then automatically go to the second priority, which will be fructose. And then it will go to glucose at the end as a last resort. And so what it effectively does is it checks your stock on hand and then will alter the formula automatically for you. It also handles potency management. So potency management is closely tied in with attributes. So what happens on a product, a good example here is milk. So when I go and get milk, I'm not actually interested in the volume of milk I got. I'm more interested in the fat content, and that's effectively what I'm going to pay for. And when I'm doing my formulations, that's the part of the component that I take into account. So as product comes in, I can grab hold of the fat content of the product after testing, and the formulations can then automatically change based on the fat content of the particular batch that I'm issuing to the order. Simplifies life a lot for production engineers. So it works in tightly with active ingredients. So if I have an active ingredient, like the fat content, for instance, I can also increase the volume by adding fillers and compensators. And there's a calculation in the background that is based on the active ingredient attributes, and it will then automatically adjust the formula and allow you to put more compensators or fillers in, so it will actually still give you the volume or the consistency. Ice cream's a good example. When people are making ice cream, they tend to take the fat content and then they add something like TNT as a filler, which gives it the consistency. Percentage control. Traditional bombs, you've got to sit down and work out what the actual weight or the volume of a particular product going into it is. With a formulation using percentage control, you can actually decide, okay, then I'm actually going to work this out based on a percentage, and it will automatically calculate the quantity based on conversions. Much quicker way of doing it, and 9 times out of 10, a lot of, especially in food industry, a lot of the recipes are actually worked out in percentages anyway. So direct translation, which means you don't have human error where people are trying to convert. Then we get into co-product variations, lot inheritance, bulk packing, sequencing, and total costs. So when we talk about co-byproduct variations, what we're effectively saying here is that when I go and report a finished item, as you can see by my top line here, it will have a good quantity which I can fill in. I can also then record the co-products or byproducts that I'm going to get out of that as well. So they are treated as different finished good items. So what it gives me the ability on a single order to report multiple outputs against a single input. Now down the bottom here, you can actually then see the difference between your byproducts, and then you can actually see your formula lines. And you can see the formula lines are the materials that go into the production order. The co-products or byproducts are the outputs of those orders, and they have a cost associated to them. Loss inheritance. Now, lot inheritance is across multiple industries. I've got a couple of examples here. So if we had a bulk chemical that we produced and then we packed it into different products, I have the ability to inherit all the attributes of that bulk and immediately take it over to the finished product. In an assembly kit, for instance, I may have multiple products inside of that kit which have different expiry dates. I can then look up all the expiry dates on them and associate a earlier shelf life date to the whole kit. If we were talking pulp and paper or carpets, for instance, you end up with a bulk roll. You're then going to split that roll. And what we can do there is there again, we can also inherit all the attributes as we go through. And that way there, your color, your thickness, your gauge and your batch control is all connected. So that way there, when we go and sell it, you're selling single batches to a single industry. Same with steel, same sort of principle. We can have bulk steel and then we chop it up into different pieces, but we can still inherit the tensile strength and so on. In the food industry, you can actually have multiple products going in, all with their own batch attributes. The end product can then absorb all of those batch attributes and give you a final result. So for any particular product, we know all the batch attributes that went into it, which will then give us the output. Bulk packing. Bulk packing is a very clever way of having a multiple pack outs for a single product. So the example I've used here is a part solvent wash. And this part solvent wash we do in 8,000 or 8,650 odd kilo batches. We then want to pack it out into multiples. So we can put it into 55 gallon drums or 10 litre drums or 20 litre drums or whatever it may be. It is a great way of actually balancing your bulk to your pack outs, because there's nothing worse than doing overruns all the time. And when you do overruns, you're then absorbing packing material. And when you come to your next job, suddenly you've run out. So as you can see here in the green, this is my bulk. This is my requirements. I've then added up all my allocations for my pack outs, which give me the other red box here, which means I've got 23,500 litres or gallons or pounds to then do it. So I can either alter the bulk down or else I can add more pack orders onto it. Entirely up to you. That way there you don't end up having drums left over of a couple of 100 kilos, which you're effectively going to pull the plug and flush it away. Sequencing. So MRP, fantastic little tool, big calculator, calculates everything based on due date and material and capacity constraints. It will usually give you quite an unusual sequence because of the way the orders have been received in. And we have the ability that during the planning process, we can then take hold of that and we can sequence. So the example I'm using here is I'm sequencing by color and packaging type. And what you see down the bottom will be the end result. So all the planned orders will now be resequenced, ignoring the delivery date to a certain extent, and then pack it into lightest, going through to darkest, and using the different packing combinations, 4 litre cans versus 1 litre cans, for instance. We can also do that with food. So if you're doing bagels, for instance, and they had different toppings on them, or donuts, and they've got different toppings, we can then sequence them in a set order. That way that reduces your changeovers. Total cost. So total cost, we use a calculation. So we effectively roll up the bill of materials, and what it will do is it will take the item cost, it will take the processing cost, add them all up, but we can also add indirect cost at the same time. So as you can see there, I've got a depreciation for the machines, which is quantity based. I've got a surcharge, which will be for internal logistics, or sometimes referred to as the old fashioned carrying cost. And then I've also got labour based overheads as well. So that would be additional staff required to planning staff and so on. I can add all those in there. Now I'm noticing more and more industries now adding things like the costing. Instead of using a landing costing module, they're kind of just adding cost to their purchase materials as they come in. You can also add costs like rebate. So if you've got a product that's going to continuously go on rebate, you can actually accrue a rebate and then compare that to the actual paid out rebate account later. So that way there you're picking up your total costs. You can also view it in a costing sheet, which then breaks down your materials, your labor and your overheads. So when you need to take cost out of a product, you're concentrating on the right area. There's nothing worse than spending hours trying to get, you know, some money out of labor, and it turns out your labor is a very minor cost, where your packaging may be 50% of your cost, for instance. And then the actual process itself. So we're now getting into master planning, scheduling, Gantt charts, capabilities, and shop floor device. So in master planning, when we run master plan, we have the option to consider shelf life or not consider shelf life. If you consider shelf life, it will also take into account the expiry date of the raw materials and reorder accordingly. So if you've got a raw material that's due to be used, but it's going to be expired by the time you get around to using it, MRP will recognise that and tell you to reorder that material. We can also take into account finite capacity, and we've also got the ability to do bottleneck scheduling. So if you've got a true bottleneck inside your industry, you can actually flick that button on and it will actually schedule the bottleneck first and then schedule everything else around it. We've also got the ability to include supply and demand forecasts. So if you're in an industry where your raw materials are actually your constraint, you can actually run a 2-level master schedule, so you can take into account the supply and the demand forecast and compare the two. And then you either need to alter the supply or the demand to meet the results. A good example of that is something like the milk industry, where they've got multiple end products, but the constraint is how much milk they can actually get during the season. So they can actually model both. There again, freeze time fence taken into account as well. More and more industries these days are trying to lock down their production schedules so they can start looking at the overall efficiency of their production plants and sequencing. So when you're scheduling, we've got multiple options. Scheduling is one of the tools in FinOps that has been underutilized for years. You do actually have the ability to do quite complex scheduling inside of FinOps itself. And as you can see by the options there, there's multiple options on how you actually want to schedule. Looking over to the Gantt chart, they've made massive improvements on the Gantt chart from previous versions. You now have functionality on the Gantt chart, so it's now no longer just a pretty picture with little squares. You've actually got the ability to schedule around jobs, next jobs, highlight, look at capacity, load. You've also got functionality in there that you can actually identify when materials are available, and you can drag and drop and switch to alternate machines, all from the Gantt chart. Capabilities. So capabilities are steadily starting to replace resources. The old-fashioned way was you used to nominate a work centre or multiple work centres or a group of work centres. These days, more and more people are identifying what their machines are capable of and then letting the system decide which order it actually wants to do. And once you use capabilities, you can then set priority orders, and you've also got skill levels. So it will always pick the correct machine based on what you actually want it to do, opposed to you actually trying to work out what machine it should be done on. So by giving a machine capabilities, setting those up in your routes, the system will automatically choose the correct machines for doing the job. And more people these days have got machines that do multiple jobs. The old-fashioned one machine for one job seems to be long gone. You've also got an embedded shop floor device. Shop floor device is something that you can run on a tablet. It gives you the ability to start jobs, to finish jobs. It can also pull up detailed job instructions, including pictures and packing combinations. You can then flick across the jobs, otherwise you can actually have the job card device will only show you the job that your next job's to work on, and they have no visibility of what's coming up next. The great advantage about doing this is, one, it can capture actual time of a process, but it can also capture your breaks, because your breaks are the key here. Now, if I look at the activities there, I can see that there's multiple reasons why I may stop the machine, and it could be breakdowns, and you could have multiple different codes for different types of breakdowns. So when you're trying to justify buying a new machine due to breakdown, you no longer have to rely on, yeah, I've been moaning about this for years. You know, everyone wants to see data. And when somebody logs in, they use a badge ID to log in, and that way there you can actually record right the way down to the person doing the job if you wanted to go that far. Most people don't, they usually use it as a cell, but you can actually have this logged down to individuals. Okay, quality. The ability to do very complex quality tests these days: quality orders, quality results, quality blocks, and inventory locks. So a quality order is set up with, you have multiple test instruments that you can use. You apply those test instruments to do particular tests. You then join those tests together in a test group, which you then apply to an item. Now, when you're doing those tests, you may be testing something like, in this example, I've got acidity. When I actually do these tests, I can actually then transfer the actual result of this particular batch to the batch record. So that way there, I've got a full track of the acidity of that particular item. And so there again goes back to the potency. If I'm start alter the formulas, it flows all the way through. You can generate quality orders based on inventory, sales, purchasing, production, quarantine, route operations, or co-product production. So the system is set up as rule-based. So you define the rules, and when you do a particular event, in this case, when I do a product receipt, after I've done that product receipt, it will generate me a quality order. Event blocking, most people, if it's a product receipt and it's coming in via purchasing, the event blocking will be invoicing. So I'm going to stop it from being invoiced until it's actually passed its quality test. That way there, if it's no good, I can just reverse the receipt and send it back to the supplier and not have to worry about trying to sort a credit. I just refuse to accept the goods. And the test group down here, it gives you the ability to assign multiple test groups, and it also has an item sampling. So you can either test every single item, or as you can test a selection of items, or you can test one single item. Entirely up to you. This is also used for grading as well, because of the batch attribute. One of your batch attributes could be the grade. So if I was getting in fruit, for instance, I could choose to grade that fruit on the way in. An example of a quality test here is a quality order is produced. Once you've gone and produced it, you have to do a certain number of tests, and the end result is it will either pass or fail. Based on whether it passes or fails, there'll be some other actions that will take place. But effectively, the results of all those tests are then stamped against that batch, and that batch attribute is then passed through. Okay, so when we get into the distribution side, we're starting to look at pricing, some vendors, country of origin, regulated products, and safety data sheets. Activity-based pricing. So what happens is that you may buy a product which has got an active ingredient, and you're going to pay a certain amount for that active ingredient. So I get 50 gallons in at 85% active, cost me $655.50. The next shipment I get in may only be 82.5, so I'm actually going to pay less for that, even though I've still got the 50 gallons. And then the last one that came in may be more. So it'll actually adjust your purchase price or your sale price based on the active ingredient. And as you can see here, this is the calculation that we actually use. So it's a basic equation where we multiply and divide different things. So we've got unit price, the constant price, and then we can get the actual, and we can have multiple attributes that we're actually applying it to. Okay, then item tracing, really essential in most industries these days as more and more government compliance seems to be coming in. Okay, so what I can do is I can drill into any batch record I want, and that batch record will hold its batch disposition code. It will also hold the expiry date, and I can also track the vendor batch number and the vendor expiry date, all the vendor information related to that batch. I don't actually have to use it. I can generate my own. Once I've actually got that batch in the system, I can click onto it and I can drill through, and it will actually show me that this batch went into a was purchased, and then went into a production line. That production line then went into a transfer order shipment, went to a different plant, and then got used in production again. So I can follow the whole trace. Sometimes you want to do a bit quicker than that. So if I've got a faulty material, I can actually click on shipped sales orders, and it will immediately identify every sales order that had any contact to that batch. So it's a very quick, efficient way of doing a full product withdrawal. The actual record itself will, like I said, holds a disposition code. It's got shelf lives. It's got all the vendor information that you can use, including country of origin. And it's got 2 country of origins. So this particular item was packed in Australia, but the origination of the bulk of the materials was actually coming from the US. Product compliance, we have the ability to do regulated sheets, restricted sheets, and safety data sheets. And I've just got some examples of what they are coming down. Okay, then we get into the disposition codes. This is the brains. So what we have here is we have disposition codes, and according to a disposition code, I can make it do different things. So an available one, it's not blocked for sales, not blocked for production, not blocked for transfer. MRP considers it to be good. If I clicked onto the unavailable one, it would have it blocked for everything, and nettable would be no. A good example of this is this particular here is just blocked for production. So what I'm saying is I can move it around my warehouses. MRP will still consider it to be a good product, so it won't try and reorder it, but I've also gone and blocked it for sales as well. QC hold, very similar thing. MRP then runs over the top of it, looks at these disposition codes, realizes that this particular batch is expired, and as you can see on this, I've got 20 on hand. of one batch. I've got 40 on hand of another batch. That's why you have the 2 on lines on hand. I've got a sales order that's going to consume 30 of it. That's going to leave me 30 left over, and that 30 will expire. So on the 10th of the 12th of 2020, it will expire unless I actually sell it. If I had safety stock in there, MRP would also give me a planned order to reorder it based on the lead time. Your actual attributes themselves. This one here is a frozen concentrate, and as you can see in here, I've got multiple batches against it, all with expiry dates that we've just been through. But I also have the ability to click into it and actually see what the attribute of that is. There's also a product search, so I can actually search for products that contain a particular attribute. So for instance, if I was making honey, I may have a whole lot of drums of bulk honey, but somebody's rung up and said they need an MGO 150, a minimum of an MGO 150. I can immediately look at all my MGOs for that honey, and I could then pick up just a range of drums that I could possibly sell them, and then we can start talking about pricing. Okay, so we get into trade allowances, rebates, same batch, customer sellable days, and customer specific goods. So your trade allowances, we've got the ability here to create trade allowances, and based on what we're actually selling, we will actually accrue these trade allowances, and we can actually monitor how we're actually going on it. So, you know, what's our sales bins, what promotional prices are we offering, and what have we actually accrued for a trade allowance. Rebates, same sort of thing. We can actually calculate rebates based on sales orders or invoice quantities. We've got date ranges that we can run it from and to, and then down the bottom here we can actually associate it to a group of products, all products, or a particular product, and actually calculate what the rebates are going to be. That will then accrue, and at the end of it, if they hit their rebate point, we pay it out. If they don't, we just drop it straight onto our bottom line. Same batch. So same batch in a lot of industries is becoming more important, especially with flooring. So if you've got flooring down the bottom there, when you're actually selling the product, you want to make sure with carpet, for instance, that you always sell in the same batch if it's going to go in the same room. The whole idea of this is that as I enter my order lines, I can actually tell it to do a same batch functionality, as you can see here. And what it will do is it will then go through, and instead of grabbing the oldest batch, which you'd expect it to do, it realized that this order was for 30. I've only got 20 of that batch, so it immediately went up to the batch of 40 and selected 30 from that. You can override these at a sales order option, but that's entirely up to you. Customer sellable days. So most industries these days are dealing with supermarkets. Supermarkets have a whole lot of constraints, and one of those constraints is they must have so much shelf life before they would accept your goods. So by item, by customer, you can actually go in and you can preset these shelf life. So if I'm dealing with an IGA, for instance, it's going to be a lot shorter shelf life remaining that I could actually sell it to them for. If I'm dealing with a supermarket, I think supermarkets still work on about 80% shelf life remaining. So it means your actual opportunity to sell this product to a supermarket is quite short. So you want to specify what it is so you don't end up sending batches that are older than the last one, because they tend to split the dummy. Okay, modern reporting. So one of the big steps with F&O now is it's actually starting to modernize its reporting. So the old horrible reports are a thing of the past. So I've got some examples in here. So this is my production performance reports where I can actually see my production performance. I've got multiple tabs down the bottom here. They all link into BI, and this is all the embedded BI that comes standard out the box, all the pre-built cubes. You can drill into any of these and you can actually see the data behind them. But what it does is it gives you a quick reference, because most people, when they're looking at the reports, they're not actually looking so much at the numbers, they're looking at the trends. So here's a couple of examples there from production. This one here is measuring job costing, so I can actually see my variances coming through from a particular period, variances by site, unfavourable production variances, and that starts actually listing the jobs that have gone a bit wrong. Purchasing, same sort of thing. So you've got an analyst of spend. You can actually see your top products and all that type of stuff, how much you've actually paid. And if we look down the bottom here, you can actually see a complete breakdown of your total purchases by categories. Cost analysis. So cost analysis out the box. You've got the good old fashioned stock turns and inventory accuracy. Obviously, I'm not doing too well in this company because I get a little warning sign because I'm below my inventory accuracy goal. You've also got low turnover products that would automatically start listing in here. We can also visually see what our inventory and our WIP value has been over a period of time. Down the bottom here, it then starts giving us a complete breakdown of the cost and where they're coming from. Sales and profitability, standard sort of reports that most people will actually take their reports and dump it into Excel. They're immediately visualized straight away. So you can have a very quick look at these dashboards and understand pretty much where your business is. Financial insights. So this one here, as you can see down this bottom section here, I am actually looking at 3 separate legal entities at the same time. So based on the type of reporting I actually want to do, I want to see a global view. So I wanted to see all my 3 manufacturing companies all in one go. You've also got visualization down here to showing you where your sales are, for instance, and where your revenues and expenses are. Okay, so from there, the benefits that we're getting here is we're getting the ability to measure, reduce unnecessary overheads, especially around the reporting side of it, because quite often you print out a report, give it to somebody who then manipulate all that data in Excel spreadsheets, and that gives you something that you can present. Giving us an agile over increase of revenue, manage the overall trade spend, especially by using those reports, and improve margins. So from here now, I'm going to hand over to Radhika, who's going to go through the customer service and commerce.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I hope you all can see my screen. So I'm just because I can't see you like Paul said, so I'm just going to get started. I'm going to very briefly touch on D365 for commerce and introduce you how we can extend commerce beyond the retail industry into maybe manufacturing. And the way we do that is through a concept in retail, which is called call center. So when we enable a call center in the system, we are allowing the system to extend certain functionality that retail has that can be useful for manufacturing industry, such as order completion of sales order on the spot. So you'll be able to take the payment for the order on the spot for sales orders. You'll be able to offer functionality such as promotions, loyalty, and many more features that we'll just quickly touch on in the next couple of slides. So what you see,
just your video there.
Oops. Okay, should be on now. So what you see here is a slide where we've configured a manufacturing call center. So this call center is what we're going to use to get the orders in the system, and through the call center, we will be able to extend functionalities on the sales order, like order completion. So when we have a call center configured, we will be able to use features of call center such as easy customer search, being able to pay for the order on the spot, offer pricing and promotion. So there's a lot of rich and complex pricing functionality that F&O has that we can extend to all the orders all the sales orders in the system through the call center. We will also be able to offer features such as upsell and cross-sell. So when you put an item on the order, you will be able to get a prompt straight away saying, do you want to upsell or cross-sell this product? We'll be able to place order on hold if you want it for reasons such as the customer is, you want to review the addresses, you want to review email addresses, so the sales order can stay on hold in the system until all of that information is available. So basically all the customer service features through the call center, when someone rings up a call center, all those additional features can be enabled and extended to any sales orders that are coming in the system if you have the call center enabled. What is really good about the call center is once you've got the call center enabled, you have a customer service application available, which is a very user-friendly service application where you're able to locate customer account records easily. So just as per that screenshot, you can see how I can search for a customer by a simple keyword. There are other search parameters that we can enable, such as phone number, email addresses. So if you have the customer on the phone, or if customers email you some queries, you can just go on this customer search application, type in some keywords for that customer record, and that will bring you all results for that customer. So this is a one-stop shop for you to be able to answer most customer order queries you will be able to answer from this one particular screen. So as per that screenshot, when I've searched for a customer with keywords cave, I can see all sales orders for that customer in the one screen, the status that the order is in, and also I can see a payment status. I'm going to show you in the next screenshot how payment ties to a sales order, but what this is telling me is that this payment has not been submitted for this order, and when the order was created, when's the ship date, when's the order date, and on the side, the related information, it gives me more information about the customer, such as his order frequencies, the amount that we would have invoiced to the customer, or even from this screen itself, I can go in and create a new sales order for the customer. So this screen is very, very rich. And again, not necessarily limited to retail. Once we have a call center, we can use this feature for manufacturing industry as well. The most rich functionality, the important and the richest functionality of having a call center is to be able to complete your order on the spot. So for your sales order, you would be able to see a complete button on that sales order screen itself, where you can define a payment method, such as putting it on account or maybe accepting credit card payment on the spot for that particular order. So we will be able to select whether we are doing a percentage payment, we're doing 100% of the payment of that sales order before we confirm the order. So this is a very, very good and rich functionality that call center offers for all orders, for all sales orders coming in the system if you've got this feature turned on. We can also tie loyalty to our call center sales orders. So loyalty, we really do want customers to come back. So we can make a complex or a simple loyalty program in the system. And with that enabled, we can tie that to our call center sales orders. So just as instance, when we can, this is our configuration of a very complex loyalty program where we can say for every amount that you spend, we'll reward you with 1 point in the system. Or we can even take it to a transaction count. So you know how we have those come 5th time, your 6th visit would be free sort of scenarios. We could have that kind of loyalty program configured, or we can have a simple loyalty where we have tiers like silver, bronze, and gold. We can say if you're a bronze customer, you get 5% discount on all your sales orders that come to the system. If you're silver, it could be 10, and if you're bronze, it could be 15. All those combinations are possible with loyalty. And once you've got that set up in the system, you will be able to see how loyalty is tied to the sales orders in the system through that loyalty card number that we've highlighted there. So you'll be able to see that number on the sales order itself. You know this customer is loyalty customer. For that reason, that customer may be getting a special price on the products that they're buying. So that was very quickly about how loyalty looks like in the system with the call center tied up and all other call center features. Just very quickly touching on e-commerce. Now this year, Microsoft launched an entire e-commerce platform for D365. Up until now, it was headless integration. We had all the headquarter operations, but now this year onwards, we have the head of this headquarters that already existed, which is e-commerce platform. Whatever orders and all the orders that we'll create in e-commerce can also be visible in our call center in back office. So giving us our omni-channel experience and extending all pricing functionality in e-commerce and call center all across all the channels that we'll configure. So the screenshot that you see here is just showing you what the website would look like once we've configured it. It's easy template to start with. Microsoft's given us a few templates, and we start beginning by editing those templates to have an e-commerce website ready. And once ready, like I said, you can experience the same omni-channel experience. All orders that you create in e-commerce can be visible in call center and can be processed through the call center as well. With that, I'll hand over to Eleanor, who's our CRM expert. Thank you.
Just on mute there, Eleanor.
Okay, sorry about that. I hope everyone can hear me now. So hello everyone, I hope you are enjoying the presentation so far. So for the next part of the presentation, we're actually going to switch up the topics a little bit. And rather than talking about Dynamics finance and operations, we're actually going to talk a little bit about Dynamics customer engagement and how this can be utilized in the manufacturing sector. So for those of you who haven't actually heard of customer engagement before, or you have, but you're not exactly sure what it is, brief introduction to it. So Dynamics Customer Engagement is a management solution that contains a suite of different connected business applications. So these applications include sales, service, and marketing. And all these applications work together and they give you the ability to access all your data across all these applications, all from within one system. And what makes this important is that it also allows for a really unified customer experience, as it allows you to track and follow a customer from the very initial contact stage you have with them, from the sales process, all the way into your service and support that you have with this customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly talk quickly about each of these different modules, starting with marketing, and just providing a bit of information on what they can do. So for Dynamics 365 for marketing, it supports both business to business and business to consumer marketing. So depending on how you like to run your marketing and who you choose to market to, the Dynamics 365 platform does have the capability to handle it. One really cool part of the functionality that it offers is the ability to create customer journey maps. This allows you to drip feed information on your products or promotions to your customers or your suppliers, and then track them throughout that journey. So you can create a promotion, notify your customers on it, and then actually receive live feedback on how your customers are reacting to that promotion. It also interacts with your social media channels, so you can promote your products on social media, and all like the data that you get from your social media. So for example, who's interacted with your posts, who has liked your post, who has shared your post. All that information can then be sent back into your Dynamics 365 system. So you can have your marketing campaign open up in Dynamics, and you can have all your information about who has interacted with that, all from the one interface. And then you can use reporting capabilities that Microsoft offers to actually create reports on your campaigns to be able to see how they're actually performing. So another feature it has is also survey capability. So it comes with an actual individual survey application to be able to create and build your own surveys, and then those surveys you can then send out to your customers, send out to your suppliers, and then they can provide feedback to you. Again, that will then get mapped through back into the Dynamics system, so you can see all the information from the one interface and then be able to easily run reports on that. Jumping over to the sales section now. So Dynamics 365 for sales allows you to build a structured sales process for your sales team. So it's easy to actually follow along with your sales team and know what stage of the sales process they're at when it comes to their opportunities. This is also really helpful for the sales team themselves, as they have a structure, they know exactly what to do when they're doing their job. It also allows you to manage account plans and site visits with suppliers. And all this information is stored side by side. So when you're doing your reporting, when you're going over your documents to make sure that your site visits and your account plans have all matched up, it's all on the same interface. It's very easy to manage as well. Another bit of functionality is that it allows you to create sales forecasts within your team. So if you look at the image that's on the screen, you can see here that we have a lot of sales teams with a bunch of different sales members within those teams. And they have a forecast amount that has been estimated for them. And we can easily see how much of the quota they've made so far. And we have percentages of how much is left. So it's a really easy way to manage your forecasts for your teams. You can also create individual goals for users as well. And last bit of functionality I want to talk about for sales is the ability to be able to collaborate via Microsoft Teams. So as Dynamics is a Microsoft product, you can integrate with Teams quite easily. It's all out of the box, so it's not very difficult to do. And so for each one of your sales opportunities, you can actually have a Teams channel dedicated for them. And you can actually pull information out of Dynamics into your Teams, so you can chat on Teams about your sales opportunities, and then that information can then be put back into Dynamics and then viewed from Dynamics. So whether you're using Teams or Dynamics, you'll be able to get the most up-to-date information on your opportunities. Moving now into customer service. So customer service, what it does is it allows you to connect with your customers or your suppliers over many different channels. Some examples of this is your phones, emails, social media, like I mentioned before. There's also a live chat option. There's also SMS integration, so you can send out notifications to customers or suppliers. And there's also a customer portal that you can set up, which allows customers to be able to interact with you via a portal website. What Microsoft does is it takes all this information from all these individual interactions, and it will then display it all on a single interface. So no matter how a customer has contacted you, whether it be from an email, from the portal, from a live chat, what Dynamics is going to do is it's going to take all that information and put it into a single interface. So it's easy to see those customers' interactions with you. And again, we can do more reporting on this as well. I mentioned before about the live chat. So this is some AI functionality that Microsoft offers, where it allows you to implement it, for example, onto your website. And it'll be a live chat box where users can ask questions to the bot, and the bot, using AI and machine learning, can actually help assist your customers without them actually having to speak to a real person. The bot can also create records in Dynamics. So for example, just say a customer is complaining about an issue with a product. The bot can recognize that there is an issue, and what that can actually do is create a case in the Dynamics system for you. So that way one of your customer service reps can then get back to that customer as quickly as possible. And we also have a concept of knowledge-based articles. So what knowledge-based articles are is it's just articles of information which you can store within the system, and then you can run searches on it. So if a customer complains about an issue that's quite a common issue, what the sales rep can do is run a search on that issue, and it will bring up documentation on that issue, and it can assist the agent solving that case. These knowledge-based articles can also be viewed by customers, so customers can help diagnose their own issues, or if they have any questions that they want answered, you can create knowledge-based articles for these questions. So that's just a really quick rundown of what Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement offers. If you are interested in it, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to do a more detailed demo on any areas of the system. What I'm going to do now is we'll now move on to the Q&A session.
Thank you very much for that, Eleanor, and to our presenters as well there. So I'll just share my desktop. Beautiful. So we've had a few questions come through. I can appreciate we might be reaching the end of our time limit. So if you do have any meetings you need to rush off to, please know we will be recording the session as well as providing you a transcript with answers to all of the questions. But I'll go through here. I can see the first one here from Don Paul. What is the difference between using a yield of less than 100% as compared with using scrap factors to generate required consumption of RMs greater than 100%?
So the difference there is that if you had 50 lines of materials going into that, you would have to go through and calculate the scrap factor for each line, where when you go and set the yield, it automatically takes it into account. You may have a product that by default, that material has an evaporation or something like that, so that scrap factor is already built into the line to begin with, and then when it does its yield calculation, it also considers that scrap factor as well.
Thanks, Paul. How do we, this one's from Miguel here, how do we capture all costs in F&O? So
the most common way is using the costing sheets. By attributing all your actual costs and associating items to cost groups, you can actually calculate all your total cost, including rebates and everything like that, as part of the bulk roll-up. Then when you actually start doing your posting based on your costing methods, it can also post those amounts directly into an accrual account. So if you're using standard costing, for instance, as I'm plastering it through and I'm reporting it's finished, it will put the an amount into inventory, an amount into a freight accrual, amount into an inventory accrual, and so on.
Thanks, Paul. Does the new scheduling Gantt chart check inventory?
Yes, it does. The one thing I didn't have on that screenshot that I showed is there's a little icon, looks like a little present box that sits there. That gives you the time when all the materials are available. So when you're moving stuff around manually, you can actually see when all the materials are available. You can choose to override it, so I could schedule something to start before all the materials are available. It doesn't stop you doing anything, but it is an icon that will actually show you where all the materials are.
Beautiful. Next question. What processes are most manufacturers using to issue material jobs? Actual issuing using RF technology or manually, or issuing via touchscreen at the workstation?
Yep, so that's something I didn't mention, is that D365 now comes with fully embedded RF technology. So it has its own scanning functionality. And more we're actually setting up directives. So most industries these days, we are picking bulk from a raw materials warehouse, sending it to a dispensary. The dispensary is then splitting it into job lots, sending it to the resource. And as I'm putting the stuff inside the machine, I'm actually scanning what I've put in there to give me accurate batch control. Then most people are actually back flushing their non-batch controlled products, and usually packaging, on the way out. So based on the amount of products that a report is finished, it's going to give me some boxes or some cans or some bottles or whatever it may be.
Thanks. For another one during your session there, are users of the quality module also capturing and recording data outside of F&O?
So yeah, if we're talking about a LIMS system here, because of the data entity structure, what we have the ability to do is we have the ability to feed the LIMS system or receive information from a LIMS system. So the quality orders are not a LIMS system by any stretch of the imagination, but say I was making wine as a good example. The LIMS system, you know, you've got a production job that's going to run for 12 months until they get the balance just right. But as soon as they do get the balance just right, they can actually send that information, the results of what the LIMS system's calculated over the last year, and give us the end result and populate that into a quality order, which will then stamp that batch or vintage.
Thank you. And just a couple more for Paul before we go to our next presentations there. Can you cascade discounts in standard functionality?
Yes, you can, but if you're talking about the supermarket discounts, which I presume you are, it's come from anonymous, so I'm not quite sure. It's probably not as sophisticated as we require for that, because you're cascading discounts on discounts, and then you've got two levels of discounts coming in at the same time. It can go from one level to the other, so it can follow a straight tree, but it can't have those trees joining.
Thanks, Paul. And under production performance, can you get kilograms in versus kilograms out by production line / pool?
Yes, you can. So the embedded one I showed you, you can actually adjust that to look up a conversion table, because you already have the conversions in there. But most people are actually taking that report outside and using Power BI, because they usually want to attach other data as well. But as long as you've got that conversion there, as long as the BI report picks up the conversion, it can convert it into kilos, and then all you're doing is you're running the report over your results based on kilos. Because I know a lot of people want to track kilos in versus kilos out and dollars per kilo cost, dollars per kilo revenue.
Thanks, Paul. And just let me know if these are heading into Radhika's time here, but I've got another question from Anonymous. Under sales and profitability reporting, can you accrue cost, for example, freight as sales orders go out the door, so you can get a full margin analysis?
Yes, you can. In fact, you go a stage further than that. What you can do is you can actually build the freight cost into a costing sheet, and then when you actually start adding your freight as a miscellaneous charge, you actually put it to a different account, and then you can offset the accrued amount for costing versus the actual amount that you've actually paid on freight.
Thanks, Paul. I've got a three-part tricky question here. One, what version of FinOps were we demoing? Two, do you need to configure anything to make the BI graphs work? And three, how often does the data get updated into BI?
Okay, so the first one, the version that I'm showing at the moment is the latest release version. So it's not the pre-release. There is actually now a version that I could have tapped into as well, which is the pre-release. So it is the latest version. To activate it, you effectively go and find those cubes and refresh them. Once you've refreshed them, they go, and each one of those cubes you can actually set up to refresh at a different rate. So I may only want to refresh one of these cubes every day, or another one I may want to refresh once a week. So they're all pre-built cubes. You can actually alter the cubes, but it does take a bit of technical expertise to actually work out how to do it.
Thanks, Paul. Regarding shop floor device, can a tablet be used online for each job where the operator is following the recipe and ticking off each ingredient as they make the product? And can quality parameters be added to check this off the list?
Yes and no. So yes, the job card device is designed to record operation by operation, and I can also set up a quality order to pop up during the operation, and that will stop you from starting the next operation until you get the results. The tick off bit is more of an electronic signature. There's nowhere where you can actually write, like somebody go in and write notes or something like that on the job card device at the moment. They are improving the job card device because they're also tying it into asset management. So when you start doing asset management a bit later on, they will actually be using that job card device to it. So I'm expecting us at some stage to have some sort of notes functionality. But
thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I might give you a breather for one question. I've got a question regarding commerce there. So setting up commerce on top of our existing FinOps, is that an easy implementation, so plug and play, or really requires bespoke integration?
So with the latest release that Microsoft's given, e-commerce has built-in templates. So it will sit on top of your existing F&O if you've got the latest version. So we'll need the site builder tools, and we can start use with all the retail components set up. You will be able to use that on top of your existing FinOps. That's what Microsoft claims.
Thanks, Radhika. So I'll finish up with this question because we've just gone over time. Is there a recommended quality system that has more functionality? Are we able to customize our layouts of certificates of analysis?
Yes, there is an ISV, and if you are doing pharmaceuticals, it seems to be Edge, which is the old full scope product, which I think is now Analytica's. Are doing it, but if you're using appliances, if you're making actual devices, then Armanino seems to be the ISV that does it, and all it's doing is they're just extending standard FinOps.
Beautiful. Oh, thanks for that, and yeah, special thanks to all our presenters. I know you put a lot of work into this, and you've done really well. So thank you for that, and thank you to our attendees as well. I'll make the recording available via email. We'll just fill in some of our question and answers here and ensure we've got them over to you as well. If you do have any questions or immediate needs, please reach out to any of the Fusion 5 contacts you can see on your screen here, or your personal relationships with account managers as well. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope you took a lot from the session. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.